guys, I'm Dani Castellano, and this is Diet Culture. Nick is with me today, and we are talking about why diet culture is spooky, specifically in the context of how much misinformation there is, whether it's coming from marketing, just like ill-informed articles that are have a lot of bias about bodies needing to be as thin as possible, but just like some misunderstanding of basic nutrition content as far as like what a carbohydrate is doing for you, and like that also means sugar, and just some of those basic things, and talking through that. I also went on a tangent about smart sweets that I think is super relevant, but also something I just wanted to talk about. And yeah, can't wait to hear what you think. Hey, Nick.
Hey, Dan. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I think it's the coldest day that it's been here on in the DMV metro area, so it's delightful.
Oh, nice. It was 70. It is like 70 some degrees here in Denver today. We discovered yesterday that we have mice, so that's been a really fun problem as per usual to deal with. So I'm currently hiding in my closet, pretending I don't have to go deal with cleaning up some things that we discovered yesterday.
Oh,
After
gross.
this episode. So,
Ugh.
all right. Because I do not need to regale you all with my mice tales, what we're going to talk about today is diet culture being spooky because there's such rampant information about like basic nutrition that is very hard to interpret and very conflicting. And I think for me, I get a little bit ahead of myself sometimes because I forget what it's like to not know the things that I know about nutrition, which is not everything, but it's hard to think about like how confusing some of this stuff can be, and just even going back to some misconceptions that I know that I've had, and just things that I've heard over the years of being a dietitian. And we want to break some of this stuff down as a little bit of a reminder to stay grounded a bit, because it can get super overwhelming, and marketing can also be super overwhelming and adding unnecessary difficulty to what we perceive we need to be doing for our health and well-being. Yeah, so Nick, you have brought this up when we were chatting last week, and I wanted to make sure before I dive in if there was something specific that you want me to answer, or that you had on your mind in this realm.
No, nothing specific in terms
Okay.
of like questions and stuff. Yeah, I'll lead it off. I have analogies I want to make at some
Okay.
point, probably, but lead it
Cool.
off.
Okay. So basics. Okay. So we have 6 basic classes of nutrients. We have the macronutrients, which most people have probably heard referred to as macros, for people who count them or have heard of counting them, but they're your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your fats. And the reason they're called macronutrients are because you need the largest quantity of those things in a day to meet your energy needs. So before I go any further, I want to clarify that it does not have to be exact with getting the set amount of nutrients, which is why I do not support macro counting. There are certainly some people who need to calculate their carbohydrates because of insulin that they take, and that is completely different situation. But to have to get an exact amount of things every single day is super unrealistic. So I just want to make sure, like, when I'm explaining this, that part is understood, because there's actually percentages that are recommended for each of those classes of nutrients. And people are going to find benefit from, one, allowing yourself to have a varying amount of those things, because otherwise you have to measure the food and have to have all that information. That adds a lot of time and doesn't really like align with a healthy relationship with food, because that's very much micromanaging. And I, as an eating disorder dietitian, never recommend spending that much time, unless you have to for a medical condition, paying attention to exactly every gram of whatever's going into your body. That is inherently disordered. That's a very unpopular opinion, but I'm comfortable saying that. So those are your 3 macronutrients. And then we also have micronutrients, being your vitamins and minerals, which are, like, if we were to pick up a multivitamin, there's going to be vitamins and minerals in those. Those are things that your body needs in much smaller quantities that we get from food, but also are going to be supplemented at times for various reasons. And then water is that 6th nutrient that we need fluid intake on a daily basis as well. And again, it's not about hitting this perfect amount. It's been very trendy over the past several years to like think you have to drink that like gallon of water that marks for you finish this by this time of day. And people find themselves like chugging fluids at the end of the day to hit their water intake. Not something I would necessarily recommend. Just like remembering to take that step back, that we don't have to hit an exact amount of everything every single day. Just like with our vitamins and minerals, like it's okay to have a varying amount of that intake. It's more about like the averages of what we're doing that are going to impact our health and well-being. And so when we narrow in on it every single day, it's just not realistic. And I think that approach can really easily be bought in on, especially when there's apps that track that, and like diets like keto, where you have to kind of be within a certain range for that to work for your body. So that's just my gentle reminder that it does not have to be that intensely serious to have a positive impact. And also, it's really important. I'm probably getting ahead of myself in this conversation, but to talk about, again, the fact that like pursuing health is not accessible in the same way for every person, and that socioeconomic status certainly is going to contribute to what is available for people. And no one is a better or less than person based on the access that they have to getting these different nutrients in different quantities. Because our culture really likes to kind of go hard on people about that in a really unjust way. So carbohydrates, I'm going to kind of back up here for a minute, provide your body, it's your body's preferred source of energy, and you need the most of these in a day. I think most people could easily identify that carbohydrates are like breads and pastas, but they also are found in fruits and in vegetables and in dairy products, and also in desserts. So basically, anything that has sugar in it is a carbohydrate, because that's what carbs are. There's 6 different types of sugars. I'm not going to get into the specific details of all this because I personally think it's kind of boring. But that is the purpose of them. So it's really funny when we talk about our fear of sugar, but also like it's something that our body needs to get energy from. And then proteins are mostly known as our like building blocks. That's the one nutrient that seems to never have gone under fire for causing anything negative to happen to us. And then our fats are going to, oh, let me talk about sources of protein. So, most people, again, could probably identify like animal proteins being a source of this, but also if you are a plant-based eater, there are going to be small amounts of protein found in things that also are primarily carbohydrates. So, like, there's going to be a couple grams of protein in a vegetable. There's going to be a couple grams of protein in different grains, like rices, quinoa, pasta, like all of these things, bread. Um, there is going to be protein in beans, which are primarily carbohydrates, but we kind of categorize them as a protein. Nut butters are primarily, if they're like in their original source and not turned into some different product, nut butters are going to be primarily a fat, but are a source of protein as well. So that's the really interesting thing about nutrition, is that we can kind of classify things the way that we want to, which can be a really beautiful and helpful thing, because if you're trying to get like a carbohydrate, a protein, and a fat at a meal, you can utilize things to like, your beans can be carbs and proteins, but if you have a pasta and you want to add beans in it, or you have a tortilla and you want to add beans for protein, that works too, because none of these things are just one thing. And I think we forget that just based on things that I hear people talk about often. And so then our fats are, one major importance of fat is the satiety factor that it provides for our body. One, it's satisfying, like it tastes very good, but it also helps us slow digestion a little bit and takes things a little bit longer to break down and provides more energy. Protein and carbs provide each 4 calories per gram, and fats provide 9. So it's a little bit more compact nutritionally, and that's why fat gets like outside of the context of keto, that's why fat has always been recommended to be limited, because the same amount, if you weigh it out in grams, is going to have way more calories, which is energy, it's nutrients, but that is often something that we fear in our society. So yeah, that's a very like quick, like 10-minute rundown on those things, because like I said, I don't find a lot of interest personally in going too much into the scientific detail behind all of it, because a lot of it, if you are interested, you can certainly like learn more about. But I think for like the average person to understand these things, to function, and to provide their bodies with what they need, you don't necessarily have to have this like super intense understanding of every single aspect of these nutrients. So I'm trying to think the best direction to take this that really aligns with our podcast and isn't just like a nutrition 101.
Go ahead if you got it.
Oh, just the biggest thing that I'm thinking about is how we talk about foods being like healthy or not healthy, and the concern about processed foods. There's a lot of concern about things needing to be gluten-free or be vegan or be keto. I went to Costco for the first time in probably a year yesterday, and the number of keto labeled products, like keto something or other, was wild. It's really like blown up. as far as what's available and what's marketed, and that was really interesting. Because I wasn't too sure how long this like phase was going to last of this diet. But now there's just like it's really taken off even more than I remember it being the last time I shopped at like a store like that.
Yeah, obviously, I see a lot of ketosis with the brosis stuff,
Nice.
just wherever. But I guess like the point that proves to me that's like a slap on the face is just like they can hop on that trend and just like destroy it and just like absolutely like every food company they can manufacture however much ketosis stuff they want, and it's annoying to me that there can't it's like they can provide the marketing need for this niche diet
Mm-hmm.
that's popping off that people will pay for, but like
Mm-hmm.
we can't do other things like make food production more sustainable or
Mm-hmm.
make it cheaper for certain, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
but, but
Well, yeah, that's the thing that is so ironic is like everything that exists the way that it does in that like economically is like because we said it was going to be that way, like not because it necessarily like I get there's more to economics, but like somewhere along the way we've dictated that, right? Because that is like you said evidence that we can make things happen when it's making someone the money that needs to be made.
yeah, and yeah, like, and for sure, like it's from the ground up in the sense that like they're supplying the demand. The
Yep.
demand is there. At the same time, the supply is or first. Like I'll give you that, but it's
Mhm.
still frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I want to talk about processed food, quote unquote, for a little while. When I say that, what comes to your mind when I say processed foods? Don't put the anti-diet culture lens. Just like tell me what first like comes to your mind.
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is like Oscar Mayer ham and like very specific, like an image of like a packaged ham comes into my
Okay.
brain. And then like the like shrill, I don't know if it was from like Psycho or what, but they're like ree, ree, ree. So like the anti-diet culture or like the that thing where it'd be like because processed meat is like the
Yeah,
worst thing in the world. Sorry, I think we just said processed food, but that comes to my mind is the take on
yeah,
it being.
that's really funny. This is what happens when you
What
ask
about you?
someone who has studied film what the first thing that comes to their mind is. I think of like a bag of potato chips and cookies because I think if someone were writing an obnoxious article about processed foods, I think that you would find that quite often. Just bagged food.
I see.
So
That's funny. That's actually interesting because like yeah, I think that's one of the last places my mind goes. I don't know if I've
interesting.
classified that as, and I'm doing air quotes here, junk
Yeah.
food, big air quotes there, but like, I feel like when I think of processed, it can only be things that you're like, uh, not you're supposed to have them like fresh immediately, and
Oh,
processing is like the witchcraft behind making them last longer than they're supposed to. That's like my
I see. That is disturbing that like how different our minds were going with that because imagine this. I am giving a brief consult to somebody about improving their health, which is something that happens very often, like especially in a clinical setting. Like that's the job of a dietitian. And I say like eat less processed food. there's no actual like oftentimes there's going to be like 5 things listed and there's going to be lists, but that categorizes food into good and bad and is really problematic in and of itself. But there's no set definition that we could all go off of what processed actually is referring to. And pretty much anything you find in a grocery store is going to be processed in some capacity, because if it's not like fresh, like in the garden attached to its source, like technically, or like an, I know we don't like to think about this, but if we eat meat, we are eating animals that were once alive, or like a live animal, like hasn't been processed yet. And so we as a culture have really like made the use of that word what we wanted it to mean to sell our products and to further like cultivate this healthism that I see running rampant and being so problematic. But like the example I always like to give is that a package of spinach that you get from the grocery store, because to my knowledge, I don't see spinach being sold at a grocery store unless it's in some kind of plastic packaging that typically isn't sold like in a bunch. Have you ever noticed that? Am I
No,
wrong?
it only comes in. I feel like romaine you can cop
Yeah, like
in a rubber
certain,
band.
like kale you can get in a bunch. It doesn't have
In a
to be in
rubber
a
band,
bag,
yeah.
but I don't ever see spinach sold like that. Not where I shop anyway.
I concur.
Okay, so like that spinach has been like cut, the stems have been cut and it's been washed and it's been put in a plastic package most of the time, or it's been like cooked and frozen in a package, which is usually also plastic, in the freezer aisle. So that is a processed food because you've removed it from its source. You've done something to it in order to like make sure it can stay a certain way for consumers to access it. And um that's like, we don't ever refer to that as being something negative because we're glorifying spinach over like what you said, Nick, of like an Oscar Mayer deli meat, um, which has also been processed in order to make it stable and be available to consumers. Um, and that is really why processing, like the function that it serves, is so that food can be accessible, because if things don't have preservation, that's a food safety issue. And I think we forget about its basic function. There's definitely people who feel that a lot of processed foods, in when I'm referring to this in the sense of like added sugars and added fats and added salts, were like products were made to be addictive, that it's like this giant conspiracy theory that these foods were made to cause addiction. I have a tough time with that personally because if you have a healthy relationship with food, like if you have the privilege to be able to do that work and can step away from these things being good or bad, there's no evidence that shows that like sugar or fat or any of these foods is actually addictive. Like food is not addictive. And I understand that there are things that have like chemicals that are not naturally found, and there's some weird things can be found in our food sometimes, but there's no, like, the idea that they're bad for you is like psychologically causing an impact, and there's no evidence that this stuff is addicting. Um, and so I'm certainly not like throwing the vitamins and minerals that I was referencing, which come from all of these foods, not just fruits and vegetables. People think that as well, that like you only get these things from fruits and vegetables, but you actually get vitamins and minerals from all sorts of foods, even if they are highly processed foods. Oftentimes you still get lots of nutrients from them, and they're going to have fats, proteins, or carbs, if nothing else. And so that is something your body needs to function every day. And so it's tough because we make this argument, and then it doesn't. If you actually break it down, it doesn't actually hold up anymore. We went into a natural grocer, like that's the brand of the company, the other day because I had to pee, and in my pregnant urgency with that, I just was like, we need to just go in here right now. Let me double check. Natural grocer. Yeah, grocers. Yes. And that store had plenty of shelf-stable food, but yet that kind of place is marketed as being superior. And a lot of products, like going up and down the aisles of Whole Foods, for example, like will be a very similar thing. Like they'll have a cake mix, but it's gluten-free. And we've equivalated gluten-free to being nutritionally superior. And that is actually, there's literally that's not real. It's not nutritionally superior. And like buying really overpriced shelf-stable items from a natural grocer's is not necessarily going to be nutritionally superior. I'm sure if we compared a few things, there could be. But oftentimes it's something similar, just made up with ingredients that we have less fear over because they're more natural, quote unquote. But there isn't, like, that's still a heavily processed food. And so we've just like shifted into thinking that those things are better because it's that like elitist, like healthist thing. Like we want to be putting the best things in our bodies. And I don't think that's inherently wrong, but it's really not accessible. And a lot of times it's not even necessary for anyone's well-being. Because again, sure, you could compare one product to another, and one may have a little bit more fiber in it, and the other may have a little bit less saturated fat, which tend to be things people look at because there have been studies that show higher saturated fat content can be negative for heart health. But guess what? There's also ones that say the exact opposite. And also, a lot of people actually like struggle with consuming too much fiber and sugar alternatives, which cause a lot of GI distress because of this hyper focus that we like have on those things. So that doesn't necessarily make one or the other better. Really coming back to those like super basic patterns of eating. And that's really hard to unlearn all of this stuff is really hard. And two, it's also hard because we like the idea of being as healthy as possible, of being as thin as possible. It's like what's been messaged to us as being necessary to be like a morally superior being. And I think like many people do want to try and be better versions of themselves, and we like to have rules to follow as human beings, and I get that. But the ones that I would give are just so basic. Like for an average person to have a balanced diet, I would recommend that you have a semi-normal eating schedule where you eat every several hours, whatever that's like for you, that supports your day to day and like what you're doing and helps to literally fuel you, because that's what food does. That's what calories provide, or energy for your body to utilize. And we need them, whether we're having a lazy day at home or quote unquote, I say that because I think that puts into people's minds that we're being just less active. I actually really am against the word lazy, so I hate that I just use that. But we're having more of a low-key day. Or we're like, we've exercised and are running a lot of errands and are out and about, or maybe you're at work and you're on your feet all day, or you're physically active, like whatever that looks like you still need energy from food for both of those examples of days. And it's important to have a routine with that because you consistently need fuel throughout the day. So that's like one super important thing. Making sure that as much as you can possibly do, you have at least 2 nutrients present. So like carbs and fat, fat and protein, protein and carbs, like some combination of these things for a snack. And for a meal, aiming to have all three if you can. And like I was talking about before, just very briefly, some foods are going to count for more than one thing, and that's great. Having some fruits and vegetables in your day in some capacity is lovely. Again, it does not need to be at every single meal and snack. It does not need to be half your plate in order to meet your energy needs. Oftentimes, the way that is plated is for like weight loss reasons. The way we see a lot of things is because the idea is try and fill up on as many like as much fullness as you can and as much fiber as you can without as many calories. And that's just really fat phobic, inappropriate messaging. Eating fruits and vegetables is lovely. They do not have to be fresh. You do not have to have a salad every single day. They can come from cans. Like all of these things are great and lovely. And focusing on the ones you like. If you prefer having vegetables with some kind of fat, one that can actually be helpful because certain vitamins are absorbed only with fat in your body and like through food. But it doesn't make a salad unhealthy, quote unquote, to put ranch dressing on it. And that is like things I hear often is like, oh, it's no longer like worth it because I added calories essentially. And that's a lie. It's actually important to have sources of fat, and salad dressing is a great way to get that. And working on not having a hyper focus on all these things with time is really essential for having like eating a healthy diet. Making sure that you drink fluids or staying hydrated is super important and something we forget about. Allowing yourself to eat foods that you enjoy eating is super important because, again, like through the work of intuitive eating, there's just so much backlash against this, but it is truly possible to like, yes, be aware of like purchasing fruits and vegetables at the grocery store, and also like not having to eat them every single day and sometimes craving dessert for dinner and that being acceptable. So there's so many scenarios that can happen, but there's really just like some basic things that we need to do of providing a variety of things into our diet. And it just gets so convoluted. And sure, there's so many factors that can make things look different for each person, but like not to the point where do I actually believe that people need to like go get a prescribed individualized nutrition plan from a dietitian? No, most of the time, probably not. And so that can really be helpful in healing relationship with food is like to have a set meal plan. But otherwise, like that's the end goal of that is to move away from it. Otherwise, unless you're doing meal planning, just so you can go grocery shopping off of it, if you have the ability to think about food in that far ahead, but as far as like having an individualized specific meal plan, I think we actually all have the ability to do that for ourselves a lot more than we are told. And that's why for me, the interest is in like healing relationship with food and understanding some of the dynamics in our society that make it feel so impossible, because I think that's where the biggest barrier is, that in the access to like genuine information and money.
Zinger. Yeah, I agree. I can give my little thing if you
Yeah, I'm
need.
curious to hear what is on your mind.
Sweet. I mean, I just want to say, kind of, we talked last week after the end of that podcast. about I was just saying all of this from my perspective, from a layperson's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
is that like just I think I started off saying like it literally changed. It has changed like 3 times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like it used to be like calories. I think it started with like calories, and then that shifted drastically to fat. In terms of like what is the mortal enemy
Mm-hmm.
of the populace.
Mm-hmm.
But then there have been things like like protein only do protein. There's all sorts of stuff. Anyways, it's changed a lot
Right.
um, in the past few years, and I don't think it's like I don't actually think like our bodies and the way we process food have changed that drastically in the past few years.
Correct.
Obviously, our understanding of these things evolves over time,
Yeah,
and
for
that's
sure.
what all this is. But basically, what I was saying though is like as a layperson, I don't understand, and you just help break some of it down, but like still so much more for me to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think so much for everybody to understand is levied on these words. Um, and I made the analogy to you like I um I, I think it's a big advantage anytime someone has these vocabulary words that other people don't necessarily understand
Mm-hmm.
fully, and they're selling them a product.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's more savage when that product is like their livelihood
Mm-hmm.
and their life, and the things that you levy on like health and nutrition is your life, right? Like that's what's at stake when people talk about this stuff. It's your death. It's you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like that's a big deal. But so like I made the analogy of Wi-Fi companies. Um, there's absolute savages with like the way they utilize the vocabulary terms to sell their products and the way they
Mm-hmm.
withhold information from you
Mm-hmm.
when it is convenient for them to sell their products. Like if I'm with my mom, my aunt, um, there are a few people in my life that like they did not grow up around Wi-Fi routers and stuff, so they don't understand all the terminology, and they will just go and they will get bamboozled.
Yeah.
Um, even my father,
I mean,
who
I had to get your help because Matt was at work when I was trying to set up our internet for our new place, and you helped me to understand because I don't get it.
but yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like they'll get you, and it just like and the beauty, the meme and the beauty of it is that they get you with like they just say, "Oh, here's more of something for this, and so it's
Mm-hmm.
better." Right? Like stuff like that where it's like,
Yep.
"Here's more of this, so it's better." Or here's,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? They don't have to do a whole lot. Same with cell phone companies. I feel like there's same with really virtually anything. Like there's so many examples of this existing. Everybody has like their specific fields of knowledge that they know these things. But anyways, just watch out because I think like misinformation is one thing, but such a complete lack of information to where you don't understand something, but you're levying your well-being on it, your life, you're mocking people who aren't doing it,
Mm-hmm.
you're you know what I'm saying, like absolutely embracing it, and you don't fully understand it. Just like be wary of that. And I say that so like same
Mm-hmm.
because it's a process, and this is a lot of this is scientific, and that changes often too. So I'm not saying it's 6 evil dudes who are like, let's let's make up a new word and throw that out at them. That'll really get them. Like I don't think it's that, but it it can really seem that way.
Yeah. I don't, have you ever watched Mad Men?
Yeah.
Like literally when they're coming up with their advertisements, like it kind of like was that.
Yeah, a little
And
bit.
again, I don't
Yeah.
think they did it out of malicious intent, but they did it out of desire to win the bid on that um business. So for anyone who hasn't watched Mad Men, it's about advertising in the 19,
It's like 50s,
I think.
60s. I have a Google device
Okay,
here.
great.
We'll just
But they would have like people, they're trying to sell their advertisement to them so that these people could use them for their companies. And that's literally what their job is to like say things to convince people. And then because that's their job, they know how to market. And then if the company, like whoever's representing, likes that, then they would go with them and pay them for that. And so it, in a sense, like it's not that far of a stretch because someone is trying to think of, they believe in their product, but sometimes like the people that are trying to do marketing, like they don't believe in that product. They're just trying to think of how to sell it to someone.
Yeah.
And it's kind of disturbing. A product that I was looking into a little bit because it really annoys me when I see it, is the Smart Sweets brand. I don't know if you've noticed this. It's very popular, but it's like a quote unquote healthy replacement for candy.
I immediately noticed the price, but continue.
How much is it?
I don't know actually, like on a per basis, but like this is $20 for a 6-pack of these
Yeah.
candies. I would consider that absurd, but anyways.
Yeah, because they're little. I think this is just a 1.8 ounce bag.
And I'm not hating. Like these could be delicious, but
So
continue.
yeah, I actually haven't tried them, which is probably shitty of me to be talking about it. The reason that I like take issue with this is because if you want to eat gummy worms, like it's okay to eat gummy worms. And they are marketing this as being lower carbohydrate because when you have, so this product says 36 grams of carb, but when you have 9 grams of fiber, you can actually like subtract that, because if you are a diabetic, for example, that amount of carbohydrate isn't going to affect your blood sugar because the fiber kind of negates it in a sense, or like helps with the digestion or prevents your blood sugar from spiking as much. However you want to look at it. So you can technically count that as what's called a net carb. So it's like what you make are your total carbohydrates, and then your taxes are the fiber. And so that's kind of how that's treated. But then also, this product uses allulose, which is a type of sweetener or sugar that doesn't metabolize in the body. So it doesn't really impact your blood sugar the same way that like table sugar would, or a lot of other types of even coconut sugar is going to impact your blood sugar. Because that seems to be regarded so highly, but it still will. And so because of that, it's said that this product has only 18 grams of net carb, I believe is what that total comes out to. And so it's marketed as a lower sugar option because, yep, that's what it says, 9 grams of fiber and 9 grams of allulose. And so it's marketed like that. And because carbs and sugar are currently the thing to be wary of, it looks like it's a better for you product. And sure, like it's nice that fruit and vegetable juices are being used for color instead of artificial coloring. I don't think it's inherently wrong to care about that. And also, not everyone like needs to have 9 grams of fiber in their bag of gummy worms. And not everyone's body is gonna feel super great about that, especially people who tend to be very disordered with their eating because they tend to gravitate towards a lot of these products. And again, I'm not a consumer of this product, but I know for me, when I've bought products that had anything like this, where they have like really high amounts of fiber in them, and I just was like curious what they tasted like, I noticed like, and 2 examples I can give is like Halo Top ice cream and Lenny and Larry's cookies that I've had. I get really bad GI distress from them because it's just not, it is like a highly processed item that's got things in it that aren't necessarily like what you need in the quantity. And so I know that that can be like, that might sound like I'm saying that fake thing is bad for you, and I'm not. So I want to be careful about how that's coming across. It's just that it's being marketed as the superior thing, but it actually may not be something that is better for you. I'm not saying that every time you have GI distress that means you shouldn't consume something, because that's actually a really dangerous rule to follow. It can lead you down a very negative path. It's just something to be curious about, because we tend to have that rule to like blame things of like, oh, I don't tolerate this, I don't tolerate that, because it aligns with like what the quote unquote healthier product is. And that's something, like, again, because I'm an eating disorder dietitian, something I'm really gonna like have acute awareness on. But it's just not, it's not realistic. And then again, like the price of these items goes through the roof, and it's just really frustrating because I know, like, going back several years when I did like basic nutrition education, I was telling people to consume things like this. Like, I was promoting Halo Top like as if they were giving me some kind of benefit for doing so. And it's not like, if you really truly enjoy it, like, that's fine. But if you're going into it because you're afraid of eating real ice cream, um, that is concerning. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
Okay. So yeah, like, if you eat Smart Sweets and you enjoy them, they don't, the amount of fiber doesn't wreck your gut, and like, you're living your best life. I'm not adding you. It's the concept that I'm adding, and the way like marketing is. It's also very like, this packaging looks attractive, and I think like it's very eye-catching. And like, having these things that say naturally flavored, no artificial sweeteners added, no sugar or alcohols added, like, they're really trying to come in with a lot of different things that we're being told all at once. But like, it's also okay to eat some gummy bears.
Yes, also, Smart Sweets. I'm gonna beat my same drum here. It doesn't necessarily imply that if it isn't this sweet, that it's a dumb sweet, but I would say it kind of does. So, if you're eating Smart Sweets, just don't think everybody else around you is dumb for not eating Smart Sweets.
Yeah, and like, the thing is, like, this product, like, if you scroll down to the bottom, it has an about page. You are our North Star, something about community, female founded, which is lovely, except for not at the same time. And then a mission to kick sugar and keep candy. We have helped people kick over 1 billion grams of sugar out of traditional candy by choosing Smart Sweets. And like, I do not believe that that is they haven't been victorious in anything other than perpetuating further like fear and harm in people. um that is my belief, and I want to be like careful, because I know with like blood sugar issues there can be a lot of recommendations for products like this, and also that it doesn't inherently mean that that's all that should be available to someone that is monitoring blood sugar. I just want to make sure and be thoughtful about that. But yeah, I don't think that that's a victory. I think our fear of food is the one of the worst things that's going on with our well-being. Obviously, that's why I do my job. That's why I do this podcast. And so this is just one particular product that I've really been like irritated with of late. I think I need to get I need to get Matt to taste these because
Yeah, I'll do it too if they're available at a dumb grocery store.
yeah, I think they're pretty readily available. The reason I say not myself is because I don't actually like gummy bears. I love candy, but I prefer it to have chocolate in it. That's my jam. So like he loves gummy bears. And so I'm just very curious. A very funny thing happened. The other day I went to Whole Foods because I feel like I have to preface this because I genuinely am not someone that like goes to Whole Foods and buys all of my groceries. That's happened like 3 times since we moved here out of pure convenience because it takes me like 3 minutes to get there on foot. But I wanted to get some ingredients for hot chocolate, and the only type of marshmallows that they had at Whole Foods was some like, I don't know, some brand I'd never like seen before, but the striking thing was like vegan marshmallows, and it actually stopped me in my tracks because I was like, why is this being advertised to me as vegan? Because I was like, what is in marshmallows that isn't vegan? And I don't think anything. I actually never looked it up, but that struck me because again of like misinformation. But let's see, jet puffed marshmallows.
And this would be news to me. Is like a gelatin not an
Oh,
animal byproduct?
no, it is.
Okay.
Is
And
that
then
why? Is there gelatin in
something
regular marshmallows?
I know I thought there was something in
Maybe I've
marshmallows
just
that
been,
was
see, I'm a
animal
registered
byproduct.
dietitian and I don't know everything. Look at that. Corn syrup, sugar, modified cornstarch, less than 2% of gelatin.
In
So yeah,
marshmallows.
you're right. That's the reason why. Um, but whatever they made these other marshmallows with, they like I thought they were fine for hot cocoa, but Matt like threw a tantrum because he said that they were grainy and tasted absolutely disgusting. Again, I'm not a super marshmallow person, just like for s'mores or in my hot cocoa, I like think they're lovely, but he like loves marshmallows. And I threw one at him across the room to like catch in his mouth. There's a reason I'm telling this story. And we lost one somewhere over like amongst where we store our shoes right inside our front door. It went missing. And the other day I came home and there was a marshmallow sitting like in the middle of the floor because Sawyer had found, presumably Sawyer, it could have been our mouse, who knows? Presumably Sawyer found this marshmallow and he didn't eat it. And I just thought that that was hilarious because it was this product that was like made to be quote unquote healthier. And my husband protested, and so did my dog, who literally licks his own butthole. So like, I just found that absolutely hilarious. And a lot of this is not me. This is genuinely not me laughing at people like, haha, you dumb idiots. I think that like you're ridiculous. I like all of this has spawned from like being in the depths of this stuff and like thinking that I needed to buy these kinds of products to be like healthy enough and good enough and okay enough. And certainly like there are a lot of experiences with this that are way more extreme or less extreme than what I went through, but it's coming from a place of like genuinely like I do remember what it was like to like think like this, and now just with the further education, especially in the healing relationship with food world, I'm so far removed from that, and that's why like I have hope that people can be, and it's okay if you like certain things even if they're considered quote unquote health foods. There's nothing wrong with that. I just worry about like where our intentions come from, because you can really easily convince your brain to tell your taste buds that something is superior because you think that it's supposed to be better for you. And when you, this was my experience, and I've heard this from many people, when you do some of that healing work, things that you like thought tasted good, absolute like taste like absolute trash. Sometimes things that you thought tasted amazing that are like the classic like quote unquote bad for you things, you also think that that tastes horrible because you were eating it in a state of feeling restricted and binging on it and things like that, and you're actually like, oh, this is not for me. But there's just so many things that can influence how we actually perceive the taste of foods. And this is a complete tangent, but actually related to this, I think, just because of the messaging that we get. And it's really hard to actually explore true satiety of food and what you actually enjoy with so many of these like convoluted things coming at you. And it's a really cool place to start, is like thinking about it, like close your eyes for a second and like think about the taste of something. And for different people, like that could sound laughable, or it could bring like an immense amount of distress. Like if you're in the middle of a full-blown eating disorder, or you've even just been convinced for 3 decades that that was not acceptable to consume. But like that is a really important thing of like coming back to your body. The nutrition information can come, and I think it's important, but it's not as important as like honoring what's actually happening for you, and like not letting marketing and like a bunch of bullshit articles on the internet or in magazines or wherever you're getting them from, that are coming at you from all kinds of directions. And like even influencers on Instagram is another like rampant source of misinformation. um like it's okay to like let that pause for a second and actually think about what you enjoy consuming, because I am willing to place a wager, if I were a betting gal, which I am not, that um many of us have things we do or do not actually enjoy. There's just a lot of circumstances and information that's impacting it. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to sell my product real quick.
Oh, what?
This is Smart Sweets is Kick Sugar, Keep Candy.
Yeah.
Mine is Kick Nicotine, Keep Cigarettes. Smart Sticks. I'm just saying, I just think it's a meme sometimes. Like if you reframe that, kick THC, keep weed, smart grass. Obviously it's a little different. It's not different. Like it is different, but it's not different.
Yeah.
It's the
No, I
same thing.
hear
Like,
you.
is that not the basis of candy? Like I just
Yes.
think it's strange sometimes
Yeah.
where we need to be like, oh yeah, let's. If you're like, I just don't. Even non-diet culture, like the mindset of like, oh, we all love sweets. Like it's like 85% of people eat sweets rampantly, but we have all decided that they are not good for us. So we're going to put less sweets instead of being like, just make up something new. You should do something else. I don't know.
Or thinking that that's not actually what's ruining everyone like we say it is.
Yeah, yeah, but it's just crazy. And then there's the market is there for that, for sugarless candy. The market for sugarless candy is absolutely buck wild. Like it's ready to
Yeah.
go.
It's
I don't know how
actually
many.
hard sometimes to find regular chocolate or candy at certain like these like bougie ass health food stores, because a lot of them are like the Lily's brand, where it's got some kind of lower sugar chocolate option. It makes like the baker in me like enraged that I can't find just like regular chocolate.
Concur.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel pretty wrapped up. There are definitely some places that could be elaborated more on, which is really good reminder for like future episodes. But I think for the purpose of this podcast series of why diet culture is spooky and like this part of just like not understanding things but yet following them anyway, kind of, was what I wanted to talk about.
Sick. I had a blast.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you, everyone.
Thank you for listening. Diet Culture is co-produced by myself and my brother, Nick Lewis. You can keep up with what's going on with diet culture on my Instagram page at Dietitian Dani Cast. If you prefer to watch rather than just listen, check us out on YouTube, and we always love ratings and reviews if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much for your support, and can't wait to talk to you next week.